Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Solar Industry Forum hosted by Solar United. I am Bryan Ekus from Solar United, and then hopefully everybody can hear me. Before we get started, first of all of the attendees have been placed on mute to eliminate any background noise during the presentation, but you can always submit a question via the Ask the Question box at the bottom of the screen. We'll get to as many of those questions as we can during the scheduled time of the seminar. Also, if you see a question that has already been asked that you'd like to hear an answer to as well, we ask you to vote for that question by clicking the like button at the bottom of the screen as well, and that will help promote that question to the top. You can make comments that you want during the event in the chat area on the right-hand side of the screen. And keep in mind, though, Ask a Question is the only place to feeding your answers to the panelists. Last but not least, we are recording the event, and this recording will be available sometime after the live broadcast. So we're very pleased to do our first Solar United webinar on how to do PV business and epidemic times and the industry latest developments. Just very quickly though, before I start, I just wanted to give a couple of words about Solar United. For those that are unfamiliar with Solar United, it's a trade association focusing on quality, reliability, and innovation. It was previously known as the International Photovoltaic Equipment Association, IPEVIA. Today as Solar United, we're now serving the mutual interest of the PV market, technology manufacturers, module producers, project developers, financiers, consultants, service providers, law firms, and other parties focusing on the growth of solar energy. Solar United is continuing to grow and evolve to meet your changing needs. And it is through the active participation of our members that we're paving the path forward. What we're doing today is part of a new series called the Solar Industry Forum. We'll be holding these online, we'll say, forums bi-monthly. The idea for these is that it's an online meeting point for all stakeholders to exchange cutting-edge information and raise their knowledge about the future of the manufacturing industry in the solar PV sector. The schedules be posted soon on www.solar-united.org. And if you're interested in holding a session, feel free to contact me at Ekus, E-K-U-S, at ipva.com. And also special thanks to our supporters. Without them, this couldn't happen. The Becquerel Institute, EU PVSEG, ESMC, the European Solar Manufacturing Council, and the IEA PVPS. Our moderator, we have some great speakers. We have Gaëtan Masson from the Becquerel Institute. We have Izumi Kaizuka from RTS Corporation. And our moderator today will be Dr. Nabih Cherradi from Desert Technologies. And Nabih is the CTO at Desert Technologies and previously CEO at Empower Sun. He's a Swiss-based photovoltaic energy consultancy firm and vice president CTO of Yingli Green Energy, which was floated on the New York Stock Exchange. He has more than 28 years of experience in the equipment production and business development within the semiconductor and PV sectors, and he holds a PhD on material sciences from the University of Henri Poincaré, Nancy, as well as an MBA from the Business School of Nancy, France. And,
no.
Oh, no? And I'd like to turn, we'll say now, our time to Nabih to allow him to continue the session.
Yeah. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning, Nabih.
Thank you, Brian, for this nice introduction to the session and myself. I'm very glad and to participate at this first webinar Solar Industry Forum organized by SOLARUNITED. We have here for that webinar two prestigious, I would say, and very knowledgeable speakers on the solar. We have Izumi Kaizuka, which is one of the most, I would say, famous Japanese solar guru. She has a very long track record and work on the solar since 2003. She is the principal and director of research division at RTS. RTS is a corporation. In RTS Corporation, Izumi has been conducting research projects of PV policy, markets and industrial trends of MITI, NEDO, and other organizations in home and abroad. Among her projects, she was notable for her contribution to IEA photovoltaic power system program under the name of IEE PVPS and the International Energy Agency. And as I said, since 2003, she has been a Japanese representative for IEE PVPS Task 1, an international working group for strategic PV analysis and outreach, and serves as Deputy Operating Agent. She is one of the authors of Task 1, key annual reports, trends in photovoltaic application, and provide analysis of PV, of global PV industry, as well as Japanese PV market trend. Trends report is most downloaded one among the reports published by IEPVPS and widely used by policy decision makers, trades, association, and academia. She's gonna give us kind of overview about the industry and what's going on today and what is going to happen due to the very strange situation that we are living today with this pandemic. It's a very strange situation that's the world and under different scenarios, science fiction, we cannot imagine that all the economy is blocked, and probably that blockage will generate other impacts on from the monetary perspective, and we don't know exactly how it's gonna be the situation will evolve financially. It's a very interesting and exciting moment, and as we always says, and Winston Churchill said, that difficulty is mastered is opportunity won. And there are a lot of opportunities in the industry. The second speakers immediately after Izumi will be Gaëtan Masson, who is the founder and managing director of Becquerel Institute. He is an electromechanical engineer from Université Libre de Bruxelles in Belgium, with a Master Political Science, Environmental Management and Business Administration from Solvay Business School. Gaëtan is a director and co-founder of the Becquerel Institute. After 10 years in the financial and IT sectors, he moved to the PV industry and developed the business intelligence section of EPIA, which is today the Solar Power Europe. Since 2013, he's acting as operating agent chairman in IE language of the Task 1 of the PV program of the International Energy Agency. He is co-chairman of the European Solar Manufacturing Council, vice chairman of the European PV Technology Platform, and board member of the Belgian Association, EDORA. He's a regular speaker in events on all continents and a long-term PV markets experts. Without delay, I'm gonna give the floor to Izumi to start with a review of the markets and the manufacturing. Please, Izumi.
Nabih, thank you for very nice introduction. Hello, everyone. I'm joining from my home in Tokyo. Tokyo is now the 6 p.m. And after the several web call today, and I'm afraid my voice may not be clear, but I'll try to make efforts to give you a clear voice and a clear presentation. Before I start to talk about today's focus, I'd like to introduce you to my company RTS Corporation briefly. We are working for more than 36 years, and not only for Japanese companies, we are working for the global PV industry players. And we are also responsible for the industry part of the Trends Report. Trends Report is one of the flagship report of the IEA PVPS Task 1. And we just published the Trends Report, and recently the Snapshot Report depicting the 2019 PV installation status. Most of the contents are before COVID time. So today I'd like to give more current status as much as possible. But the first I'd like to give the situation of the industry in the end of the 2019. And in 2019, we saw the production increase, and of course, China dominates the production share. And major companies now have more than 10 gigawatts of the manufacturing capacity. But the progress of the technology we saw throughout the last year, and now the major players combining the several technology, achieving the higher efficiency or higher output. And it was notable that the 2019, the share of the single crystalline technology surpassed the multi-crystalline technologies. I will talk a little bit later. And also we will see the further cost reduction from polysilicon warehouse sector. But I have to say the impacts of the COVID-19, due to the financial restriction and also some delivery delays, the small manufacturers are now having difficulty, and I expect the acceleration of the consolidation due to COVID-19. I'd like to show some of the slides with the new preliminary figures. This slide shows the installed capacity, annual installed capacity, annual production, and also the production manufacturing capacity. The 2019 data is still preliminary, but I can say that enough capacity to supply the growth of the PV market at now. But I have to say our analysis is based on the reported data from the IAPBPS member country. Each member country submit to the national survey report, and if I add the reported figures, the total amount could be 200 gigawatt, but the actual annual capacity should be less than 200 gigawatt, maybe 10% to 15% less than this figure, because some of the outdated equipment retired, and several factors, some double counting might include this manufacturing capacity. Okay, this slide, all the charts are about 2018. Now we are preparing the 2019 data for the PV trends report of the IAPBPS. But the share by the country shows in each steps of the value chain, China dominates the production capacity. But in case of polysilicon, China now has the 60% of the share as of the end of the 2018. But 2019, I think that China's growth will be seen. And also the module production, the preliminary analysis of my company suggested China's share of the PV module production in last year will be close to 80%. And now I'd like to tell you more about some companies. Here I listed the top 10 PV module suppliers rankings, and now at least 3.6 gigawatt of the production or supply you need to be the top 10 players. And I'd like to note that if you see sorry, this is very busy, but if you take the production sites, you can see the diversification of the production site. Especially last year, we saw the growth of the production capacity in US due to the safeguard problem. Now, Jinko or Hanford, and also I guess Longi or other companies established manufacturing facility in the United States. And we will see more diversification for the module production sites. And this shows the major players' manufacturing capacity. Now, some companies has a very aggressive plan. For example, Longi is planning to have the 30 gigawatt capacity in this year. And to be the top 3 supplier, I think the production capacity needs more than 10 gigawatt to 15 gigawatt capacity last year. And if I compare the crystalline silicon and the thin film technologies, still thin film technologies capacity is smaller than the crystalline silicon. But First Solar increased the production capacity with their new generation products. And this, as I mentioned, this shows the technological trends of the PV modules by technology, and in 2019, the share of the single crystalline will surpass the multi-crystalline technology. Already the Chinese association reported the share of the single crystalline wafer reached 6.65% in 2019. This is because of the demand for the high efficiency products, and also the players producing single crystalline silicon technology investing the production capacity very aggressively. And also the price down is ongoing, but each value chain steps, the improvement of the efficiency of the output or is underway. And some of the companies are combining the several technologies for the new products. For example, recently, Trina Solar announced 500 watt PV modules using the larger wafer and also the 3-cut cells to achieve the higher output. And now the pack is kind of the standard, and the next technology products commercialization using the next technology is also ongoing. This is a summary of the upstream technology. Now I'd like to tell you something about downstream trends. This is very general trend, but all the players are seeking the lower capex and opex for the lower LCOE. Nowadays, the PPA level, price level is dropping. And to achieve the lower LCOE, the efforts of the all the stage, the development, design, procurement, construction, or the M seeked by the players. And the bifacial PV and trackers are adapted. And because of the lower LCOE pressures, the BOS cost is also dropping. And also, it's very important to mitigate the risk of the component failures now. And operation and maintenance, the new technology are adapted. And also, I guess, because of the COVID, the remote monitoring will be very important for the after COVID era. And in the downstream sector, that we saw several new business opportunity, the application-wise, or the repairing business, and also that we have to adapt to some new functions to ensure the grid support. For example, now the inverters requires several functions to support the grid voltage or the other aspect. And also the requirement for the building energy efficiency codes create the opportunity for the BIPV, and also the use of the storage batteries with PV. And finally, the recycling is getting important with the growth of the PV market. So these are the general trends. we analyzed for the trends report. Now I'd like to go to the COVID impact part. This map is from the University of the Johns Hopkins University in US, and when I see these maps, I always think the red circles are covering the major important PV markets all over the world. And in the first quarter, the impact of the COVID-19 is mostly for the upstream sector. But now the impact is shifting to the downstream sector. First, I'd like to give the situation of the upstream players in the first quarter. This shows the map of China, shows the number of the infectants. You can see the intensity of the COVID-19 by the color of the and my colleague plotted out the location of the manufacturing sites of the major manufacturers. And you can see the polysilicon sector are mainly located their factory in western side. So in the first quarter, actually this is reported by the Chinese Industry Association, that in February, their operation ratio was almost 90% and not so much affected by the COVID. But silicon wafer or solar cell, the operation ratio of the first quarter, February, close to 70%. And in case of the PV modules, the average operation ratio in the first quarter was less than 60%, because in Zhejiang province or other provinces, there are manufacturing site of the PV glass or PV encapsulant. The delay of the shipment or lockdown affected the production of the components, and the PV module manufacturing operation ratio was lower than the wafer or solar cells. But the second quarter, I heard now most of the manufacturing plant keeps around 80% of the operation ratio. So most of the impact of the upstream sector in China are already solved. But the problem remains the delivery delays. So now I move to the impacts to the downstream sector with next slide. Because of the lockdown or economic situation, also in some country the exchange rate dropped, and electricity demand also affect the project pipelines. The distributed PV sector, the construction delay reported, and also it's very difficult to do the face-to-face sales activities. And in some countries, the cost increase reported due to the foreign currency value. And the utility scale, in every stage, the COVID affects the business. The utility scale PV under operation, now it's very difficult to go to the on-site for the maintenance, so the output loss might be happen. And due to the lower electricity demand, in some countries, the curtailment, yeah, risk is increasing. And also the revenue loss is reported due to the falling currency value. And the utility scale development pipelines also affected the delay of the construction, and there might be the rush of the construction started in the half of this year. But in such case, shortage of the workers or components might happen. And of course, in this sector, the increase of the capex might happen. And because of the electricity price is falling, it is difficult to close the corporate PPA or merchant PV might be difficult. I think Gaëtan will give more details later. And also some of the auction rescheduled or canceled. So this affect the demand for the next year or 2022 as well. But we have some good news is that already some governments take actions to protect renewable energy developers, and also some countries or local governments adopted the economic stimulus measures using PV. I will not give the details, but I expect these measures will contribute to the recovery of the PV demand in these countries. So now my presentation is close to end, and I'd like to give my message as a conclusion of my presentation in this part, PV after COVID-19 and future. So the current situation, raise a question. Now the electricity demand is falling, and also economic activities are stagnant, and fuel price is slowing down, and we are concerning the plunge of the fossil fuel price will slow down the energy transition. Which pathway we should follow? I think the COVID-19 creates some opportunities for PV as well. And already some of the major oil companies shows their business strategy changes more for the renewable energy. So I hope the COVID-19 will create the more create or accelerate the driving force for the energy transition. And this chart is from our snapshot report. And as you can see, the PV is leading leading technology among the renewable energy. And in the many aspects, the PV can contribute to establish more sustainable or more resilient society. So I hope we can overcome the COVID-19, and PV should contribute the recovery for the future. Thank you for your kind attention. And lastly, I'd like to thank to the NEDO to support the PVPS activities.
Thank you so much, Izumi, for that large overview regarding the industry from the upstream to downstream that shows us a real, I would say, opportunity, problematic and opportunities for the next step after when that virus will disappear and will return to the normal. For sure that we say commonly after any problem, we say that the world will never be the same. For sure that we're gonna learn a lot from that experience. And one of the things that we learn is about the globalization and about and this when we spoke about the globalization, we spoke about the industry and we spoke about the concentration of the production in one of the regions of the world. Nevertheless, is another opportunity for the other people to think about how to move ahead, especially when the explosive expected markets for the solar. As you said in your last slide's conclusion, that it's a huge opportunity for the solar in order to face the problematic of the climate change and all these things. Sorry. Having said that, what is going to happen now regarding the markets really and development of the project? In what has been announced since that pandemic started, a lot of projects have been delayed for a certain period of time. Most of the productions were stopped. Now in the Far East, production are resumed little, but I don't know if they are now working 100%. In other parts of the world, they are still stopping. So how this is gonna affect the next projects and the market? The second thing is that they are also in that market. A lot of projects, they have been delayed. Others, they are just stopped. And which is going to be very interesting is what's going to happen with the race. And as Gaëtan will be presenting to us about the market situation and the race probably of the LCOE and the race of low LCOE, low price, how this low LCOE regarding these projects who are now facing the delay, they will be or they will remain profitable for their, I would say, developer. So all having said that, I will give the floor to Gaëtan to give us his point of view about the market developments. So Gaëtan, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Nabih. Do you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. You should also start to see my screen. Thanks, Bryan and Nabih, for the introduction. Thanks, Izumi, for your super positive presentation. And I think it's good to remind that indeed PV can significantly contribute to sustainable development goals, which is something we don't highlight much in general. I will go through my presentation, starting basically by the current status of the PV market, and I will go more and more into elaborating what could happen, in my view, in the coming weeks and months and years. Just starting to say a word about Becquerel Institute. Becquerel Institute is a research and strategic consulting company established in Brussels, active in all continents, working with the PV sector, but also the energy sector at large. We are not working only PV companies, but also for battery companies and more into the energy transition. And we are active in a certain number of research projects at global level with IEPPS, at European level with Horizon 2020 projects, and also at national level. I like to start with a figure that we haven't seen much, which compares the speed of development of solar PV, wind, and nuclear. And what we can see, even if we cannot compare gigawatts of PV, gigawatts of wind, and gigawatts of nuclear power plants, we see that the development of PV is the fastest we have ever seen. And this is something that we realized every day until recently in the industry. It's something that goes pretty fast. And we should first think about which have been the drivers of PV development in order to understand how it could happen in the coming years. The first driver was definitively the super low cost of PV components. More than 90% of reduction has been seen in PV modules in 10 years. And definitively, this is something that we haven't seen in many industries. And it came from competition between manufacturers, and we still see it today, economies of scale, but also decrease of installation costs due to optimization. Something quite interesting is that for utility scale plants, the cost of installation decreased at the same speed as the cost of components. In parallel, we had the pressure from regulatory schemes, which are asking for more and more competitive PV installations, and that pushed also prices down. And what we used to know 10 years ago, like feed-in tariff schemes, which were not always adapted in due time, are disappearing quite fast and are being replaced by competitive instruments. And these competitive instruments have driven the prices down. By driving the price down, they have accelerated the market development in many countries, and so on and so on. And just before the COVID started, and I will come to 2019 in a minute, we have seen a growing market trend in almost all regions of the world, but also an increased positive perceptions from energy majors, from policymakers, from many stakeholders, that PV was becoming a mainstream energy source globally. Izumi already mentioned it. The IEPPS has published its annual snapshot of PV market reports, where we compile I would say, most accurate data about PV market development. Those are refined during the year and are published in general in the last quarter in the trend reports. But basically, this gives already quite an idea about what happens. 115 gigawatts, it's the first good estimate of installations last year. You have probably seen slightly different numbers published by consultancies. Has personally difficulties to go slightly above 115 gigawatts because most large markets have been identified. We know them, and so it means it would be to look for some gigawatts in emerging markets which are not easily traceable. But I personally don't believe that we were significantly higher than that. IRENA published numbers below 100 gigawatts, and I have difficulties with the IRENA methodology. Here we count DC, so nominal power of PV plants, rather than AC, which is not easily measurable. What are we talking about? We're talking about the output of inverters. Are we talking about the grid connection? Significantly using DC numbers, which are comparable and that everyone in the PV industry understands easily. What we can see in this figure is developments, and something quite interesting is that each time we had a major market development, we had a year of stabilization after. It happened in 2012, after 2011, it happened in 2014, after 2013, it happened in 2018. And basically in 2019, due to the decrease of the Chinese PV market, which went down from 44 gigawatts to 30 gigawatts, the major growth that we have seen on all continents is not that visible. So with Chinese market stable in 2019 compared to 2018, we might have had a 130 gigawatt market in the world. So a quite significant improvement. And actually the markets outside of China grew year on year between 2018 and 2019, 40%, which is again a major growth. And just looking at the top 10 countries in terms of installations and in terms of total installed capacity, we have countries from all continents, or almost all continents and regions. At least definitively the European Union, since many energy policies are decided at the European Union level and not at national level anymore. But it says something quite interesting about PV market development. But I won't spend too much time on that. Something which is also important when we refer to the PV market is that we should definitively differentiate the different segments. And I'm only mentioning here in orange the distributed PV market, so residential, commercial, industrial applications, but also VIPV, some small agricultural PV installations, and so on and so on. And the blue part, which is the utility scale markets or centralized markets, which comprises the fast-growing niche of floating PV, but also large agricultural PV installations, and so on. So when we're talking about the PV markets, we should definitively look at the different segments. 1 gigawatt plant in the Middle East is not driven by the same conditions as a 3 kilowatt system installed on a roof in California, or a 60 watt system on a small house in a slum in Bangladesh. And this is something quite important. So, COVID-19 impacts. I think we should definitively understand that the impact will not be the same in all regions. And I will not talk about the industry. I think Izumi did it perfectly, but much more at market impact. And here we have to identify two different impacts. A conjunctural impact, which is somehow temporary. It will have deadlines moved for many utility scale projects. We see it in many regions. It can go from 3 months to 6 months or even more, depending on the situation. And it's not the same in all countries. It's not, the reasons are not exactly the same. It could be to source the components. It could be difficulty to finance projects. It could be simply the lack of coherent administration schemes in some countries occupied doing something else. Sorry. And then we might have also investment decision delayed for smaller applications in residential, commercial, industrial. It's no-brainer to imagine that residential people or SMEs might choose to invest in their own business in the short term rather than investing in PV. So there will be an impact, and we already see that impact quite visibly in many countries. Then we have a structural impact. That's something Izumi touched a bit at the end of her presentation. We have a significant economic, which will have lasting consequences, and it's already visible in a certain number of major PV markets, the European Union, the US, India, not even mentioning Latin America, for instance, even China. There will be a long-term travel destabilization, which will also impact commercial activities and the ability to send experts on site for PV development. Then there is that question of low oil prices, but I personally believe that this won't have the impact. On the contrary, low prices, conjunctural low prices, will have a tendency to affect significantly oil producers by making their business less profitable, and it might simply change the way our money is allocated by financial institutions between different energy sources. I think, on the contrary, low energy prices, and especially low oil and gas prices, might favor the energy transition. Then there is a big question on how public money will be used for economic recovery in a certain number of countries, and will PV find its place? There are positive odds, but we have to see how it takes place and what could happen. Then what could be the impact on the financial sector? Because it's hard to imagine that the current economic downturns won't have any impact on the financial sector. I think it will have, and it might derive into a credit crunch in some countries unless central banks are injecting more money in the system. And then there will be the question of local manufacturing, driven by the need to recreate jobs locally, and especially jobs in the industry. It's not only just a question of it's psychological, and we have seen it with the question of medical supplies. There will be a strong push for local manufacturing in the coming months and years. This figure, which has never been officially published and which was done using data from the PV Market Alliance, so the Becquerel Institute, RTS Corporation, ACEA, and CREARA, was done at the end of last year, and with basically numbers showing that, and it was always the case, we have two different kinds of possible outcomes for the PV market. The question is, what can happen? Since we had 115 gigawatts last year, what could we expect here, and what's going to happen? I will come back to that in a minute with the same figure. So how can we quantify or qualify PV market impacts? And I will come to that in a minute. The price downwards for PV components is not a given. We don't see it significantly for the time being. Yes, prices are going down, but not as much as what we could have seen in the past. And will it have a significant impact on the market? I'm not super sure. I'm more concerned about the demand for PV, which globally still depends on policy choices. Tenders are defined by policymakers, self-consumption schemes are defined by policymakers, the question of grid costs, market liberalization, and so on. And so without policy support, there will be a significant impact on the speed at which the PV market can develop or not. Then I already mentioned it, there is a question of the recovery packages in some countries. And for me, there is still a huge uncertainty. It really depends on the country and whether it will or not affect positively PV. The barriers to PV development still exist in many countries, and unfortunately, the attention from policymakers will not be directly put on that. Then there is a question of electricity prices, which are down for the time being due to the lack of demand. It's a conjunctural effect, not a structural effect, so it won't really impact PV business models. I mentioned already the reduced ability of actors in the residential and commercial segment to invest in PV, and the fact that due to the lack of available money in general, competitive PV will be favored everywhere. So that's for the qualified impact. And there are still some positive market fundamentals which might drive PV up. Climate change hasn't stopped. No? The question is still there. The electricity need for 2 billion people in emerging countries is still there as well. PV is increasingly competitive, and capital is available. The question is whether it will be available at sufficiently low interest rates, and that's a different question which I will not touch here. And I wanted to show you this because it's quite interesting. This comes from a figure. This comes from a paper which has been published by Miro Vartianen and from Fortum and other people, including myself, about the competitiveness of PV towards market electricity prices in Europe, of course, before the COVID. And it shows that basically PV was competitive with electricity market prices, even in Finland, but even more in Italy, Spain, in the UK, in Belgium, France, the Netherlands. Even if it went down, I think that we'll see in the coming years more and more PV developments due just to the natural competitiveness of PV. Then we start to see also many interesting developments with regard to energy communities, virtual self-consumption, collective self-consumption, which might trigger a faster development of distributed PV. I will not spend too much time on that today. And just going a little bit forward before going to the scenarios, what do we observe on the market for PV cells and modules? In this case, for PV modules, it's quite obvious that we saw some price decrease over in 2019, and that continued in the first quarter of 2020, except for N-type modules. But we don't see a significant acceleration of this. And if we look weekly now, we see that the price downward trends was similar, maybe slightly accelerated for P-type mono-PERC in the last weeks, but we cannot really say that we see a significant decrease of prices, except for PV cells, especially for N-type, but it's more anecdotal. So by showing you that, I wanted to tell you that there are some impacts that we start to see on the market, but there are still some very important structural aspects of PV, which makes me believe that even if we see a downturn in the market now, we can see an upturn relatively soon after. So now let's try to quantify that. Just to explain a little bit the methodology, the question is to assume that a part of the PV market in the utility scale segment will be simply delayed but not cancelled, which might result into this year 15 to 25 gigawatts less than what could have been expected. It of course depends on how the epidemic could evolve, if we have a second wave in the second part of the year and so on. But it will also lead to a decrease of installation for distributed PV applications, either by delaying or, in this case, cancelling them. I know that some countries experience more an increase of demand for distributed installations, but it's not the general rule. So here between 110 gigawatts instead of 130, 140, what we could have expected. But again, I say it really depends on the last quarters of the year and the situation. We have seen tremendous installations in the last quarter, a certain number of years, which have changed completely the outcome of the year. This might happen this year as well. But I would say that in general, the probability is more for a market below the one we had in 2019. Three scenarios, a low and a high scenario, as usual, but also a high probability in my opinion. The low scenario says that we'll have major delays in utility scale, a decrease of demand in distributed segments, and a significant economic downturn with little support for PV. I don't believe in this scenario, but this could happen. This is the yellow scenario, which might lead in the coming years to a reduced growth, but still a grow in the PV sector. The high scenario says basically that delays will be compensated before the end of the year, one, and the dynamics of PV market for a restart of the market quite fast in 2021 with a significant growth in the coming years. I would rather say that the reality will be in between the two, so the delays will impact the 2020 market with some consequences in 2021 and delayed uptake in new and emerging markets, but still with growth. This translates into this. Sorry. So basically going from 115 gigawatts to around 100, maybe 110 this year, and then slightly growing. That's the red line, and that's the pessimistic scenario. And yeah, I mixed up colors. And in more realistic scenarios, I would estimate that we could be around 110, maybe even 120 gigawatts, growing, but not as fast as expected in the coming years, with 150 gigawatts next year, maybe 200 gigawatts a year in 2023, and so on. There are still some possibilities for good policy decision. So I would say a policy-driven scenario, which would be the optimistic one, where basically we could go up to more than 250 gigawatts in the forthcoming years. It's not totally impossible. I would have a few months ago, before the COVID crisis, seeing all the positive developments which happened in the PV sector and positive announcements from many organizations and governments. It might still lead to such a development, but I doubt that it will be, in the best case, 110, 120. So I'm concluding with that. But I think we'll have an impact on the PV market. So in the beginning, many things can still happen, but based on what we see for the time being, this is the most probable situation. The price are not crashing for the time being, and it also comes from, as Izumi mentioned before, in many Chinese factories and other factories, which means that basically inventories are not as high as they could have been. And so we might see relatively stable price or slightly decreasing price. And then I would by that by saying I think we can head to 250 gigawatts. The question is when? Is it 2023 in the most optimistic scenario or a bit after? And why I'm mentioning 250 is that basically under the current policies, that's basically the threshold that we could expect. It's definitely not enough to fight climate change properly. It's definitely what the PV market could achieve. If the Indian market would grow up to the levels it has promised, if the market could develop in a certain number of countries in North Africa and Latin America, if Europe could go back to the levels it should have had during the entire decade, and so on and so on. So I would say a rather positive outcome once 2020 is passed, and a lot of attention will have to be kept on the economic factors in the most important markets. So in China, in the European Union, in the US, in India, in Japan, and in all emerging markets. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Gaëtan, for your excellent presentation and that overview about the market and what's going on. It's indeed very interesting to see how the pandemic impacts or doesn't impact. The things impacts, of course, the progress of the projects, impacts the progress of the development of the projects, and impacts also the new projects. Nevertheless, it didn't impact, as you mentioned it, and this is the thing that we can see in the markets, the prices didn't crashes, and I think that's there's no deal or the deals are very, very low. Regarding the developments, I can say that, for instance, and in my experience and what I'm living, for instance, the Middle East, because I saw one of the questions from the attendee, question about the Middle East. The Middle East is still going on, especially, for instance, Saudi Arabia. The program didn't stop, and all the schedules for the project, especially round 2, are maintained, and it's ongoing. The announcement of the round 3, it's also moving ahead and nothing stopped. Of course, that this is mainly a work, how to say this, work office or work home, because people can do that job. But regarding the projects and the constructions and all these things, of course, that has stopped. And what is going to be very interesting is after now we start here in Europe, for instance, we saw many countries that now they stopped this lockdown, or they are going very smoothly to release that lockdown. Nevertheless, in the Middle East, it's still very strict, and just the UAE announced another lockdown, and in a very severe manner. But all in one, the perspective are very good, and this could be an accelerator for the next year, I would say, where this year all the expectation and all the projections have been lowered by almost 25 to 30% from different research institutes. We can maybe expect that for the 2021, the progress will be much more than will be projected or expected, which is good for the business. It's also good for the manufacturer, because as we all know, there are a lot of announcements about new factories, new capacities. And this is very interesting. I think that's, we have time to pick up different questions, and I will launch just the question that I can read in that has been received. And one of the questions which is very interesting, and I don't know who can address that question, is regarding the prices and the next. The oil prices are going down, and we reach even the negative. A few days ago, we had minus $40 per barrel, which is extremely interesting. Today, the prices are going up, but it's still a very, very low prices. So how this could impact the solar markets? I don't know who can answer that question. Gaëtan, Izumi? Hello?
Hello.
Yeah,
hello.
I don't know if you have an idea about that.
The
duality between the price of oil and the price of solar.
Yes, the something I can say, the marginal price of the solar is zero. No validation, and it's very difficult to invest the new capacity for the new investment for the oil with this current price. And also the in US, some of the companies doing the natural gas business went bankrupt. So the maybe in developing country, some country needs to depend on the fossil fuels for the time being. But the thinking about the investment financing institutes for the investment to the carbon technology, I think the future will be the renewables.
Okay. Gaëtan, maybe have any word about the prices?
But just something about oil prices. For me, we don't see a correlation between oil prices and PV developments. So the PV is basically competitive with electricity market prices, and electricity market price don't depend on oil prices. They depend partially on gas prices, which might be indexed on oil prices. But the current level of oil prices is just conjuncturally. It's not going to remain super low at that level, and I don't think that it will significantly influence the PV market. I've seen in the chat many questions about the fact that scenarios could be too optimistic. I would say it's impossible on the short term to say anything about what could happen in the coming years. So will we face an historical, I would say, economic downturn globally? Yes. Will PV be an instrument to fight that economic downturn? That's the question, and it's a policy decision. So for sure, if we don't push policymakers to consider PV as one of the instruments that could bring back the industry and simultaneously bring back, I would say, the economy and simultaneously fighting climate change, for sure, it will be more difficult. But I have hopes, and I would say educated hopes that PV could be part of the economic recovery in many countries.
Okay, thank you, Gaëtan. There is an interesting question that's also it's in the heart of the situation today. It was before, it's now more, and next we don't know exactly how. Is regarding the manufacturing and localization of the manufacturing. Is a lot of governments and regions, this is from Frank, are calling for reduced dependency on China. That's calling for a stronger local solar industry. We start hearing, and just recently it was some, I would say, in the press release from, for instance, Meyer Burger, a technology provider and equipment, they are considering to enter the manufacturing era. How this could be realistic in order to localize and to develop the industry? Is it a real hope or a hip, considering the current situation? Don't know.
I really would like to answer that one in two parts. There is a global trend and there is a local trend. If we look globally, the Chinese PV industry succeeded very famously in developing fast and at low cost the PV industry. But now it frightens, for good reasons, a certain number of governments. And the goal is, of course, not to close borders to Chinese imports, but much more to look at, in a globalized perspective, should we depend only on a limited number of countries? And what we have seen with medical equipment and the shortage of medical equipment in many countries due to our inability simply to produce locally what we needed will have consequences on the decisions of policymakers in all, I would say, industries which matter for the economy. And industry is one of these. So I have no doubt that we will have a significant push for local manufacturing. And local manufacturing doesn't mean producing modules. It means controlling the value chain, which means in the case of PV, and talking about crystalline silicon, it means producing. We have some wafer manufacturers in Europe, even if they are not producing enough. We see that Masson has plans for, I would say, multi-gigawatt production, but we definitively need cell production. And this is something which will come in the political debate in a super acute way in the coming weeks and months. It will not come only for the creation of industrial jobs, because we know that PV is not producing tens of thousands of industrial jobs, but it will come in the debate just for a question of security of supply. And then about Europe in general, you mentioned Meyer Burger announcing that they would like to build a factory in Germany, but there's REC that announced its willingness to build a factory in France. I'm talking about cells. We have an Green Power with its pilot line for heterojunction. And we have other projects which I will not list here. So I think there is a conjunction of interest between companies which are making plans, and plans which have been announced are quite well advanced in general. And on the other side, now the need for some to push goes in this direction. And I will just finish by that. We cannot destroy hundreds of thousands of jobs industrial jobs in the conventional energy industry without a backlash if we don't produce, if we don't create industrial jobs locally. And it's not a question for Europe only, it's a question for everywhere in the world. And a large part of the opposition towards PV development in many countries is coming from that, from the destruction of traditional industrial well-paid jobs, not replaced by similar ones in the renewable energy industry. And so without closing the borders to Chinese imports, we are not living in that world, and I hope it will not happen. We need local manufacturing.
Okay, thank you, Gaëtan. I think that we can take another one or two questions. What do you think, Bryan? Do we still have time?
We're already over time, but the questions are good. Let's take one more, and then we can wrap it up.
Okay. Okay, thank you. So one of the things which is very interesting that there are some countries, especially for instance, I can say Jordan. I don't know if you guys know, you hear about that. They shut down most of the power plants because of low consumption of energy and low energy need. They shut down. And that was a very problematic and unprecedented case. And at the same time, we can see that the question of storage is getting more and more hot, because if they have that capacity to manage in a better way the production of the solar energy, it will help. Several questions came from the audience regarding the storage. What about the storage future?
Okay, Izumi, please.
Okay, the storage, I think the Gaëtan already explained the PV application, distributed and utility scale, and the storage also the two world, the storage for distributed generation and also the storage for grid. But in case of the, I think the current impact of the COVID, one of the good sign is the demand for the storage and PV is increasing in some countries because of the needs for the resilience and the distributed storage, the price is getting down and down. So but in case of the grid storage, I think we need to see the more development of the grid scale storage system, because some of the storage used for the grid is just for the frequency control or other purpose, and the seasonal storage, we do not have the practical option besides the pumped hydro. Still, we need the more development of the storage for the grid scale.
I can add something to that because I fully agree. I think the problem of lithium ion is that lithium ion in the short term will be highly needed for electrifying transport, what we see happening quite fast. And so we might need in the PV industry either other storage technologies. It could be zinc air, it could be anything possible using non-scarce materials, but it will be needed. And we see it already in a certain number of tenders. With grid constraints, it will be extremely difficult for utility scale PV in a near future to not to consider storage. But I would really consider different technologies than the different lithium-ion technologies which are used for the time being.
Okay, Gaëtan, thank you very much. Well, I think that there are a lot of questions regarding the technology, the cell technology, module technology, floating applications, and all these things. And I think that this will constitute a very interesting another webinar that we are organizing soon. The aim of that webinar is to present the situation and to discuss the industry latest developments regarding the time that we are living and what could be expected or projected for the future, immediately after, and in the long term also. So I think that we had a very interesting and very informative presentations from Izumi and Gaëtan that I would like to thank at first. I would like also to thank all our participants. We start with over 78 participants. Now the people are start leaving. We are now at 55 participants, which is a very good number. I would like to thank everyone, especially the people from both sides of Europe, Far East, or in the other part of the world in the US, which is still night, early morning for certain. We're gonna have a continuation of this webinar, and we'll focus at during each one in one topic. That topic was the focus on the current situation, how strange is it, and what's gonna happen next. And based on the questions that we received, and this is already in our agenda, is to focus more and more in the technology and what is gonna impact new developments, new technologies, and what the market is willing to accept, and the prices trend also, because all-in-one is what's technology and for which price, and also development of manufacturing, how it's gonna happen. Focus, as I saw one of the question, 85% of the market share that's from China. What other countries will behave, what's gonna happen next. So I think that we have a lot of topics to be discussed and to be shared together. I would like again to thank the organizer also, which is SOLARUNITED, through Bryan, who was not easy to organize this, but I know the difficulties faced, and now we had a very nice webinar. Thank you, Bryan. Thank you, the audience. Thank you, Izumi, and thank you, Gaëtan.
And thank you to you, Nabih, for moderating this session. I thought it was great. As you mentioned, we'll be doing this every 2 weeks. Check, we'll say soon, at the Solar United website for, we'll say, the next topics. And yes, we have a lot of things that we need to discuss during these times. And the most important thing is to keep the market informed, and that's what we are hoping to do by having these solar industry forums. So I want to thank everybody again, and thank our speakers as well, and thanks for the audience for joining us on this particular session. And wish everybody a great day as well.
Thanks a lot, and have a nice day, evening, morning, whatever.
Thank you very much. Have a good day.